Do you ever feel like you're just locked in this constant battle with yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Deep down, what the healthier choice is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's grabbing the apple instead of the cookie, or going for that walk instead of just collapsing on the couch.
Or hitting the sack on time instead of scrolling.
Actually, but then the moment comes, the actual decision point, and it's like your willpower just poof, vanishes. You feel like you need this, I don't know, superhero level of discipline or something. And you just end up feeling frustrated when you inevitably fall short sometimes.
That feeling is so incredibly common. And, the sources we're diving into today offer a really powerful explanation for why that internal fight is so tough to win consistently.
Yeah.
We're often told, aren't we, that success with habits and healthy choices is purely about having enough discipline, enough mental grit.
Right. Just try harder.
Exactly. But what if that whole idea is kind of missing a huge piece of the puzzle? What if the real key isn't actually needing more willpower? Because, let's face it, research shows willpower is finite. It's often unreliable.
It definitely feels that way sometimes.
So what if it's about being much, much smarter about the setup? What if your environment, the physical space you live in, the way choices are presented to you, could actually do the heavy lifting for you?
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. Forget trying to battle your own brain minute by minute. This deep dive, then, is all about unlocking these insights that show us how we can actually design our surroundings, our homes, our workplaces, even the subtle ways options are framed for us.
Yeah, the framing is key.
To make those healthy behaviors not just easier, but like almost automatic. We've pulled together insights from a whole stack of material here. Behavioral economics, psychology, some really fascinating real-world examples to try and get to the heart of this.
Yeah, and our mission in this deep dive is pretty straightforward, really. We want to dig into these sources you've shared and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the stuff that shows you, the listener, how to stop relying so much on that fragile, fleeting thing we call willpower.
Which always seems to run out right when you need it most.
Doesn't it just? And instead, start setting yourself up for, automatic success. Just by subtly reshaping your world, making that healthy choice the path of least resistance.
Okay, let's jump right in then. We've all heard that classic advice, right? Just try harder, you just need more discipline. It's a standard answer.
It really is.
But the sources we're looking at today seem to suggest that relying on willpower alone, especially for long-term change, is, frankly, it's often a losing game.
Absolutely. One of the articles points out that people default to thinking willpower is the answer, but it just rarely proves effective for sustained change over time.
Right.
And this isn't just, a personal frustration. This gap between knowing what's healthy and actually doing what's healthy has massive implications, huge ones, really, on a societal level.
That's the staggering part I found. These individual behaviors, things like smoking, a poor diet, not getting enough exercise, drinking too much alcohol.
The big ones.
Yeah, the big ones. They're estimated to underlie something like 40% of premature deaths in the U.S.
Yeah.
40%.
It's huge. And the financial cost just mirrors that health cost, doesn't it? Around 75% of the nearly $3 trillion spent every year on healthcare in the U.S.
Trillion, wow.
Is linked to chronic conditions that are strongly influenced by these very behaviors. Cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity. There's this enormous urgent gap between what we know about health and what people actually do.
So why the disconnect? If the information is out there, if people generally know smoking is bad or exercise is good, why isn't it translating into action more reliably?
Well, one of the key insights from the material is that a vast number of our decisions aren't made through careful, rational thought. They're made without thinking.
On autopilot.
Exactly. We operate on autopilot for so much of our day. So just providing education about the long-term health consequences, while it's necessary information, obviously it often isn't enough because it relies on engaging that conscious, rational part of the brain.
The part that takes effort.
Right. The part that requires effort and is often just bypassed in the heat of the moment or when we're tired or stressed. Our default state, our immediate environment, that's what tends to take over.
So the context we're in, the immediate surroundings, that seems to be a far stronger driver of what we actually do than we usually give it credit for.
Much stronger.
It's less about some kind of innate internal strength you either have or you don't, and much more about the external setup.
Precisely. And understanding this is really where the field of behavioral economics comes in. It offers a radically different and I think often much more effective approach.
Behavioral economics. Yeah. Okay, it sounds a bit academic maybe. But the power of it as described in these sources, seems to be how incredibly practical it is.
It really is. It sort of meets people where they are, you know? The core idea is about understanding and influencing human behavior by recognizing that we consistently deviate from perfect rationality.
We're not robots.
Not at all. But crucially, we deviate in predictable ways. So instead of building policies or even personal strategies based on this assumption that everyone is a perfectly rational actor who will always make the optimal choice if you just give them enough data.
Which clearly doesn't happen.
No. Behavioral economics acknowledges our biases, our mental shortcuts, our tendency towards inertia, or, focusing on the present rather than the future.
So it's about working with these existing patterns of behavior, these predictable sort of imperfections, rather than trying to force ourselves or other people into completely new ways of thinking that require constant, exhausting effort.
Exactly that. And the contrast with traditional economic theory, which often does assume those perfectly rational actors, it's really stark.
Yeah.
The sources give a powerful real-world example. Studies showing heart attack survivors who don't take their prescribed life-saving medications, even when those medications are provided completely free.
Wow. How does traditional economics explain that?
Well, a purely rational model really struggles to explain that behavior. But behavioral economics, by acknowledging factors like, say, forgetfulness or the complexity of managing multiple pills or just focusing on feeling okay right now, it provides a much more useful framework for understanding and potentially changing that behavior.
Okay, that makes sense. And a central concept that comes out of behavioral economics and seems really critical for this deep dive is choice architecture.
Yes, choice architecture. It's essentially the design of the environment in which a person makes a choice.
Like the layout of a supermarket.
Exactly. Or the order of items on a menu, the default setting on a website, even just how things are arranged on your kitchen counter. It's about how the options are presented, ordered, or framed, and understanding that this presentation influences the decisions people make.
And the key insight here is that choice architecture is, well, it's unavoidable, right?
Absolutely unavoidable. Someone, somewhere, always decides the layout, the order, the default. It doesn't happen by magic.
Right. So because it's unavoidable, we can actually be intentional about how we design that architecture. We can design it to gently guide people towards better outcomes, towards choices that align with their own long-term welfare or goals.
Which brings us neatly to this concept called asymmetric paternalism.
Okay, asymmetric paternalism. Break that down.
So this approach, it's discussed in the sources, is about implementing choice architecture, designing the choice environment in a way that guides individuals towards choices that promote their own welfare or health goals, but importantly, without restricting their freedom to choose otherwise.
So it's not forcing anyone.
No. It's labeled paternalistic because it does involve an entity, maybe a designer, a policymaker, or even you when you're designing your own space, trying to guide behavior for someone else's perceived good. But the asymmetric part is really key.
Why asymmetric?
It's designed to disproportionately help those individuals who are prone to making choices that aren't in their best interest, maybe due to biases or inertia or just not paying attention, without imposing significant burdens or costs on those individuals who are already making informed, deliberate, and rational decisions.
Okay, so you're not taking away the less healthy options entirely. You're just making the healthier or more beneficial option the easiest one, or the most prominent one, or the most convenient one.
Precisely. A classic example from the source material is the cafeteria step.
Right, yes, the food lineup.
Right, just arranging the food in a cafeteria line so the healthy items, the salads, the fruit, presented first right at the start. That dramatically increases the likelihood that people will choose those items.
But the burgers and fries are still there at the end.
They're still there. If someone really wants the ice cream or the fries further down the line, they can absolutely still get them. Their freedom isn't restricted. But their attention and their initial decision point, that was directed towards the healthier stuff first. The path of least resistance led to the salad.
It's a nudge then, not a shove.
Exactly. A gentle influence based on how our brains actually work in the real world, not how we might wish they worked in theory.
And this whole principle connects really profoundly to the power of defaults, doesn't it?
Oh, defaults are incredibly powerful. Super powerful. A default option is simply the choice that gets automatically selected if the individual does nothing, if they don't take any active step to change it.
Like the pre-ticked box on a website.
That's a perfect example. And the source material shows how this influence plays out everywhere, often initially outside of obvious healthcare contexts.
It's fascinating to see how deeply defaults shape behavior in areas we might not immediately connect to health choices.
Yeah, think about retirement savings. In systems where people have to actively opt in to participate in a company's retirement savings plan, the participation rates are often, well, pretty low.
Because it takes effort. You have to fill out forms.
Right. But in systems with automatic enrollment, where employees are enrolled by default unless they actively take steps to opt out, participation rates just skyrocket.
Because doing nothing means you save.
Exactly. It requires effort and a deliberate decision not to save. The same principle applies to things like car insurance. Defaulting drivers to slightly more comprehensive coverage leads to significantly higher purchase rates for that coverage. Online, think about newsletter subscriptions or tracking preferences requiring users to actively opt out of being recontacted results in far, far fewer people opting out compared to systems where you have to actively opt in.
The inertia is real.
It's incredibly powerful. And the sources show this power is already shaping outcomes, sometimes maybe unintentionally, even within healthcare and our day-to-day health-related decisions.
How so in healthcare?
Well, think about contributions to flexible spending accounts. They're influenced by whether the default is 0 or maybe based on what you contributed last year. But the most dramatic and probably most frequently cited example is organ donation rates.
The opt-in versus opt-out system.
Exactly. Countries with an opt-out system where you're automatically registered as an organ donor unless you actively register not to be, they boast organ donation rates approaching 99%.
99%.
Compare that with opt-in countries, like the United States, where you have to make a conscious decision, take an active step to register as a donor. The rates hover around maybe 10%.
10% versus 99. That's just unbelievable.
It's a colossal difference, and it's driven almost entirely by that default setting. It really highlights how inertia, just the path of least resistance, can dictate literal life and death outcomes for people waiting for transplants.
Wow. It really makes you realize that doing nothing isn't some kind of neutral act. It's just accepting the path that someone else pre-selected for you.
Precisely. And defaults influence decisions partly because of that inertia. It's just easier to do nothing than something, and partly because sometimes the default can be perceived as the recommended or endorsed option, especially if we don't have strong personal preferences or maybe feel a bit overwhelmed by the choice.
Okay, so recognizing this immense power, there's obviously significant interest in strategically using defaults within healthcare to actively improve outcomes and population health.
Yes, absolutely. The possibilities are really wide-ranging. Proposals discussed in the sources include things like making routine vaccinations an opt-out process rather than opt-in.
So you get the reminder, and unless you say no, it's scheduled.
Something like that, yeah. Or automatically removing indwelling catheters in hospitals after a set time period, unless a clinician makes a deliberate decision to extend their use, which could reduce infection risks.
Okay.
Or even making generic drugs the default prescription choice, unless the doctor specifically indicates, for medical reasons, that a brand name drug is necessary.
Right, pushing towards the more cost-effective, equally effective option, unless there's a specific reason not to.
Exactly. And we see these kinds of tactical uses of defaults in everyday consumer choices, too. Choices that have direct impacts on our health, even if they aren't decisions made in a clinic setting.
Like what?
Think about the design of fast food menus. The default option for a combo meal almost always includes fries and a large sugary drink, right?
Always.
You have to actively make a request, step outside that default path to get a healthier side, like, say, apple slices or a bottle of water instead.
You have to ask for the change.
You do. Or consider prescription refills. Defaulting to a 30-day supply for chronic medications instead of maybe a 90-day supply. Well, that creates 3 times as many opportunities over 3 months for a patient to forget to refill their medication.
More chances to drop the ball.
Exactly, potentially leading to interruption in treatment. These are all instances of choice architecture using defaults, and they can be designed with conscious intent either to benefit health or sometimes maybe subtly undermine it for convenience or profit.
So the key point from that research by Halpern and others seems to be that ignoring default choices isn't just a missed opportunity. Setting a default based on, say, convenience for the provider or just historical practice, rather than thinking about the potential consequences for health, that can actually be actively detrimental.
That's the argument. Since a default has to be set one way or another, you can't avoid it. The argument is strong for setting it in the way that promotes welfare, promotes better health outcomes.
Makes sense.
And while, some might raise concerns about paternalism, the sources really emphasize that defaults are often unavoidable anyway. The question isn't if we use defaults, but how we choose to set them. Do we do it passively, just accepting whatever is easiest or traditional? Or do we do it actively, leveraging them to guide decisions towards better health and well-being?
Okay, so that covers choice architecture and defaults influencing decisions in policy, on websites, and commercial settings. But what about our most immediate personal environment? The actual physical space of our home.
Now this is where the principles become incredibly tangible and really actionable for you, the listener, in your daily life. There's a particularly eye-opening study mentioned in one of the sources, the seafood diet, that looks specifically at the kitchen environment.
The seafood diet, I remember reading about this. It's such a perfect illustration of the power of our physical environment, isn't it?
It really is. The core idea is so simple, yet profound. You eat what you see, and you eat what's easy to grab.
Seafood, eat food.
Pretty much. The study involved taking photographs of over 200 residential kitchens and then correlating the types of ready-to-eat food that were just sitting out, visible on the counters, with the weight of the adults living in those homes. They focused specifically on women in this analysis.
And the findings were pretty stark, weren't they?
They were incredibly telling. The researchers found really clear correlations. For example, women who kept a visible bowl of fresh fruit on their kitchen counter weighed, on average, about 13 pounds less than their neighbors who did not have fruit visible.
Wow, 13 pounds difference.
Yeah.
Just from having a fruit bowl out on the counter. That's the environment doing the work right there.
It truly is. And on the flip side, the correlations with the less healthy visible items were just as compelling, if not more so.
Uh-oh.
Women who kept soda visible on their kitchen counter, cans or bottles sitting out, weighed a significant 24 to 26 pounds more than their neighbors who didn't have soda visible.
24 to 26 pounds just from seeing soda. That's huge.
Right.
Soda on the counter. Yeah, I can see how easy it is to just grab one without even thinking about it.
Absolutely. And maybe the most surprising one for some people, women who kept cereal boxes visible on their kitchen counter weighed around 20 pounds more than neighbors who didn't have cereal boxes sitting out.
Cereal.
Really?
20 pounds.
Yeah. You might think of cereal mainly as a breakfast food, right? But if the box is just sitting there on the counter all day, it's incredibly easy to just grab a handful anytime you walk by. It adds up those mindless calories throughout the day.
That cereal finding really drives home the you eat what you see point beyond just the obvious junk food like cookies or chips. It's about anything that's immediately accessible and ready to eat.
Exactly. The takeaway is just undeniable. If tempting, less healthy food is right there, visible, easy to grab, you will eat more of it, period. But if healthy options are just as visible and just as convenient, you dramatically increase the chances of choosing those instead.
So it shifts the battleground entirely. Instead of standing there in front of the pantry, having that internal wrestling match about whether or not to grab the cookies you see right there.
The willpower struggle.
You win the battle beforehand by making sure those cookies aren't visible and easy in the first place, or at least much harder to get to.
Precisely. It's not about needing to be some kind of willpower superhero all the time. It's about being an environment design strategist in your own home.
Environment design strategist. I like that. And the article, How to Redesign Your Home, gives us some really practical room-by-room examples based on this very principle.
Yeah, let's walk through some of those concrete tips. Starting with the kitchen, obviously, since that's where the seafood diet study really highlighted the power of visibility.
Okay, kitchen first.
In the kitchen, the core strategy is dead simple. Make the healthy choices visible and easy, and make the unhealthy choices invisible and hard. So get the junk food out of sight, put it in the back of the highest cupboard, maybe in an opaque container, or ideally just get it out of the house entirely.
Out of sight, out of mind. Hopefully out of mouth.
Exactly. And then reverse that visibility for the healthy stuff. Keep that fruit bowl filled and prominent on the counter or the table. Rearrange your fridge and your pantry. When you open those doors, the healthy options, the yogurt, the pre-cut vegetables, the whole grains, they should be the first things you see, right at eye level. Make them the convenient grab.
Make the default choice in your own kitchen the healthy one. Smart. What about other areas of the house? The bedroom, for instance. That seems important for different kinds of habits.
Oh, the bedroom environment is absolutely crucial, especially for sleep quality and for reducing those digital distractions that mess with sleep.
The phone scrolling.
The dreaded phone scrolling. One really powerful tip is to charge your phone outside the bedroom. Just get it out of there overnight.
Ooh, that's a tough one for some people.
It can be, but it removes that immediate cue, that glowing screen right next to your bed that triggers the mindless scrolling habit before you sleep or first thing when you wake up. Another big one, remove the television from the bedroom entirely. The bedroom should really be for sleep and intimacy, not for passive entertainment that just interferes with getting good rest.
Create cues for positive habits, too.
Yes. Place a glass of water on your nightstand before you go to bed. That can prompt hydration right when you wake up. And then optimize the physical environment itself for sleep. Blackout curtains to block out light, maintaining a cool temperature, investing in a comfortable mattress and pillows. Make sleep easy.
Those phone and TV tips, those are definitely forms of positive friction we might talk about later, adding a small hurdle to a potentially detrimental behavior.
Exactly. It's about making the unwanted behavior slightly less convenient.
How about the living room? That's often a site of, well, sedentary behavior.
Very much so. And mindless consumption, maybe snacking while watching TV. So again, apply the same principles. Make desired actions easy and undesired ones harder. Maybe put the TV remote away in a drawer instead of leaving it out on the coffee table. Just adding that small intentional step needed to start watching might make you pause and think, do I really want to watch TV right now?
Interesting.
And conversely, place prompts for activity or other behaviors you want to encourage. Keep some exercise equipment visible, a set of dumbbells in the corner, a yoga mat unrolled nearby, maybe a stationary bike or a small rebounder where you can actually see it. It serves as a visual reminder to use it spontaneously, maybe even during commercial breaks if you are watching TV.
Or create an alternative focus.
Yes, create an inviting reading nook. Have a comfy chair, good lighting, maybe a small table with a book already on it. Make reading a more appealing and obvious choice than just automatically defaulting to the screen.
Okay, and the bathroom. What can we do there?
Clear the clutter. That's a big one for any room, but especially the bathroom. Clear clutter from the counters and surfaces. Physical clutter often contributes to mental overwhelm. And then arrange your essentials to support habits. A really simple one. Place your dental floss right next to your toothbrush. It acts as a visual cue to remember to floss immediately after brushing, making it part of the routine.
Simple but effective. The office or workspace is another critical environment, right? Especially now with more people working from home. Habits form quickly there, especially around snacks and just sitting all day.
Absolutely critical. Same principles apply. Get tempting snacks out of your immediate desk area, maybe keep them in the kitchen. Keep some light weights or resistance bands visible near your desk to prompt quick exercise breaks throughout the day. Stretch. If it's feasible for you, consider integrating movement more directly into your workday with a standing desk or even a treadmill desk. The goal in every single room is to consciously manipulate the cues and the ease of action to support the behaviors you want.
These are all such powerful, concrete examples of shaping your immediate physical space. Making the desired actions the path of least resistance, and making the undesired actions just slightly less convenient, slightly harder.
Exactly. And you can take this concept of dedicated environments even further. Setting up a home gym, as discussed in one of the sources, is a prime example of leveraging your environment for automatic behavior change.
A home gym feels like a bigger step, maybe, but it perfectly embodies that principle of making exercise incredibly easy and convenient by just removing barriers.
It absolutely does. It eliminates the travel time to a commercial gym, the need to pack a gym bag, any privacy concerns you might have, or waiting around for equipment when your workout space is literally just steps away.
No excuses.
Well, fewer excuses. It dramatically lowers the activation energy, the initial effort required to just start exercising. The source material emphasizes customizing your home gym to your specific preferences, using functional training gear that fits your space, having the right accessories readily available. The key tips shared are, 1, keep your workouts varied to maintain interest, and 2, most importantly, stay consistent. And having a home gym makes consistency much more achievable precisely because the environment supports it so strongly.
So it's not just about having the fancy equipment itself, but it's the environmental cue and the sheer reduction in effort and barriers that having that dedicated space provides.
That's a huge part of it. And we see this principle of environmental design playing out not just in our private homes, but also in public spaces, often influencing our health choices whether we realize it or not.
Right, like the cafeteria examples we mentioned.
Exactly. We already touched on cafeteria layouts being designed to put healthy food first. Google is famously cited for applying this principle in their employee kitchens and cafes. They apparently hid tempting candy in opaque containers, while leaving healthier options like fruit and nuts clearly visible in glass bowls.
The seafood diet principle again, but in a corporate setting?
Precisely. Or think about the basic architecture of buildings. Are the stairs clearly marked, well lit, maybe painted brightly, and easy to access right near the main entrance? Or are they tucked away down some dingy hallway while the elevators are front and center, brightly lit and easy to find?
Yeah, the design definitely nudges you one way or the other.
It subtly influences whether people choose the healthier option of taking the stairs or the easier, more automatic option of the elevator. The environment shapes the choice.
Okay, so these are all ways to make the healthy behavior the easy, almost automatic choice. But what about the flip side? What about making the unhealthy choice slightly harder, slightly less automatic? This seems to be where another fascinating concept from the sources comes in. Positive friction.
Yes, positive friction. It's a really interesting idea, described well in the positive friction source. It refers to a deliberate design choice to add a small, intentional difficulty or maybe an extra step into a process.
That sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because in design, we usually try to minimize friction, make everything as smooth and effortless as possible.
And minimizing friction is usually good design, especially when the friction is just unnecessary hassle or it hinders actions people actually want to take. That's often referred to negatively as sludge.
Right.
Positive friction is different. It's friction with a purpose. The added difficulty is intentional and designed specifically to disrupt mindless or automatic behavior and prompt a moment of reflection or a conscious decision, ultimately for the user's benefit.
Okay, so it's friction designed to help you, not hinder you unnecessarily. Can you give some examples of how positive friction is used, particularly for health or well-being goals?
Sure. In the digital world, think about messaging apps. Some have features that add a little step or a prompt if you try to send a message really late at night, or maybe to someone whose notifications are currently snoozed. It might pop up a little message asking, "Are you sure you want to disturb them right now?"
Makes you pause for a second.
Exactly. It makes you pause and reflect instead of just firing off the message automatically. Another example mentioned was a proposed banking feature. Imagine if late-night purchases, which might be impulsive, required a quick review and confirmation the next morning before they fully cleared. That adds a small hurdle to potential overspending triggered by impulse or maybe being tired.
Interesting. And how about in broader public health policy?
Well, smoking bans and increased taxes on tobacco are classic, really powerful examples of positive friction in action.
Right, making it harder and more expensive.
Well, exactly. Simply providing information about the health risks of smoking, while important, had a relatively limited impact on its own. But making it illegal or just plain inconvenient to smoke in public places, indoors, near entrances, that added significant physical friction. And making cigarettes much more expensive through taxes added major financial friction. These deliberate hurdles dramatically increased the effort and the cost associated with smoking.
And that worked much better than just telling people it was bad for them.
Far more effectively, yes. It's significantly reduced consumption. It's about adding just enough of a speed bump, if you will, to break that automatic link between a cue, maybe stress or finishing a meal, and the impulsive, potentially harmful behavior of lighting up. It gives the rational mind a chance to catch up and maybe make a different choice.
Okay, so how does all this environment design stuff, whether it's changing our physical space, using defaults smartly, adding positive friction, how does it all tie back to the fundamental idea of habits?
Well, it directly impacts the habit loop. That's the core framework that Charles Duhigg popularized in his book, The Power of Habit.
Right, the cue, routine, reward loop. I remember that.
Exactly. So a habit is basically a neurological loop that starts with a cue, some kind of trigger in your environment or internal state. That's followed by a routine rename, the behavior itself, the action you take. And it ends with a reward, something positive that reinforces the link between the cue and the routine, making you more likely to repeat that routine the next time you encounter the cue.
Okay, cue, routine, reward. So where does environment design fit in?
Environment design is primarily about manipulating the cue and manipulating the ease of the routine.
Okay, I see. So having the fruit visible on the counter, that's the cue.
Right.
Making it easy to grab and eat. Maybe it's already washed. That's making the routine effortless.
Mm-hmm.
And the reward is, satisfying hunger, getting a tasty bite, feeling good about making a healthy choice. So you're strengthening that positive habit loop through designing the environment.
Precisely. And conversely, charging your phone outside the bedroom removes the cue. Seeing the phone light up, feeling it vibrate, knowing it's within easy reach, the cue that triggers the routine of endless scrolling before bed. It also makes the undesired routine harder to start because you'd have to physically get up and go get the phone.
So environment design makes the desired habit loops easier to initiate and complete, and it makes the undesired habit loops harder to fall into.
That's the essence of it. You're making the cues for good habits obvious and the cues for bad habits invisible. You're making the routines for good habits easy and the routines for bad habits difficult.
And the sources also touched on this idea of keystone habits, didn't they?
Yes, keystone habits. That's another important concept from Duhigg. Keystone habits are essentially small changes or habits that people introduce into their routines that unintentionally carry over into other aspects of their lives. They spark a chain reaction, leading to the development of other good habits.
They have ripple effects.
Exactly. They're foundational changes that can have these cascading positive effects.
Like the example in The Power of Habit about the company Alcoa focusing intensely on workplace safety. That wasn't just about safety in the end, was it?
No, not at all. The new habits and communication processes they built around improving safety actually spread and ended up improving communication, efficiency, and performance throughout the entire company in unexpected ways. Safety became a keystone habit for organizational change.
Okay. And how might that apply to personal health through environment design?
Well, tying it back to our topic, think about setting up that home gym we discussed. That might start as one specific goal or habit: I want to exercise 3 times a week. But the increased physical activity could easily lead to other positive changes. You might find yourself wanting to eat healthier to fuel your workouts.
Yeah, makes sense.
Or you might start prioritizing sleep more for better recovery. Maybe you feel more energetic and productive in other areas of your life. The keystone habit of just consistently using the home gym, enabled by the environment, creates momentum for wider success across different areas of health and well-being.
So designing your environment isn't just about optimizing these isolated individual behaviors. It can potentially kickstart and support a whole ecosystem of positive habits by focusing on the right cues and making the desired routines the easiest path forward.
Precisely. And, this whole concept of designing your environment, it extends beyond just physical spaces and immediate behavioral nudges. It can also apply really profoundly to our mental and emotional environment, too.
Okay, how so? This is where the discussion turns towards minimalism, as explored in one of the sources.
Exactly. Minimalism is presented in the source material not just as, say, an aesthetic choice, like having white walls and very little furniture.
Right, not just the look.
Not just the look, but as a powerful tool for intentionally shaping your internal environment. It's framed as the intentional promotion of the things we most value in life and the removal of anything that distracts us from it.
So it's about removing excess.
Removing excess, yes. While it often does involve reducing physical possessions, it's fundamentally about removing excess from life more broadly. That includes physical clutter, yes, but it can also mean excessive commitments on your calendar, constant digital distractions, mental baggage you're carrying around. Basically anything that doesn't align with what's truly important for your well-being, your focus, and your peace of mind.
And it's framed quite strongly as a direct counterpoint to consumerism, right?
Very much so. The source argues that modern consumerism relentlessly encourages us to acquire more and more stuff. And in doing so, we end up giving away huge amounts of our time, our energy, and our mental space just managing it all.
Yeah. You work hard to earn money to buy things.
Then you spend time cleaning them, organizing them, maintaining them, insuring them, worrying about them.
Maybe putting them in storage units.
Exactly. Paying to store things you've forgotten you even own. This cycle, the source suggests, contributes significantly to stress, debt, anxiety, and ultimately lower personal well-being. We get bogged down by our possessions.
So the physical clutter isn't just visual noise on the surface. It's actually a manifestation of, or maybe a contributor to, mental clutter inside our heads.
That's the core connection highlighted. By simplifying your physical surroundings, intentionally reducing the number of things you own and have to manage, keeping only what you truly need, use, or genuinely love, you can simultaneously reduce mental clutter. It frees up significant cognitive and emotional energy that was previously tied up in managing or even just being subtly influenced by all those possessions.
And what were the benefits reported by people who adopted this kind of minimalist approach, according to the research mentioned?
They were quite substantial, particularly for mental health and overall well-being. Participants who adopted minimalist principles reported feeling a much greater sense of control over their lives, like they were driving the bus again.
Competence, yeah.
Exactly, a sense of competence. They experienced significantly less stress and anxiety. They felt they saved mental energy that they could then redirect towards more fulfilling activities or relationships. They reported having more time and actual mental space for things like internal reflection, mindfulness, or personal growth.
Huh.
They also spoke of relearning to appreciate simpler experiences, finding greater peace and clarity in their daily lives, just feeling lighter somehow.
So it's really about intentionally designing an environment, both external and internal, that supports focus and clarity and intentional living, rather than one that constantly fosters distraction, obligation tied to stuff, and just mental overwhelm.
It's another really powerful facet of leveraging your environment, this time focusing specifically on optimizing your internal state and aligning your life more closely with your core values.
Okay, so we've explored just how powerful environment design can be. We've talked about manipulating physical space, leveraging defaults, adding positive friction, clearing mental clutter through minimalism, all these ways to nudge ourselves towards healthier choices and support positive habits. It really does seem like an incredibly effective alternative to constantly relying on willpower, especially for those of us who feel like we, well, lack it sometimes.
It certainly presents a very compelling case for shifting our focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Moving away from just the internal struggle and looking much more closely at the external setup. But here's where one of the sources introduces a really critical nuance, a potential challenge that kind of complicates the picture and gives us something deeper to consider.
Uh-oh. What's the catch?
It comes from the study that specifically looked at pre-commitment strategies. The one titled something like, "Pre-commitment is effective, but choosing it freely requires good self-control."
Ah, yes, the pre-commitment experiment. The one involving solving those matrix problems for payment.
That's the one. This study tested not only if pre-commitment works, spoiler alert, it does, but crucially, who is most likely to actually choose to use it when they're given the option freely.
Okay, remind us how the experiment worked again.
So participants worked on these matrix problems. Some problems were easy but unpaid, others were harder but paid. In one condition, participants could just freely choose between the easy unpaid and the hard paid problems throughout the task.
Okay, the baseline.
Right. In another condition, a sort of paternalistic setup forced participants to only work on the harder paid matrices for a set period. That was a form of forced pre-commitment, removing the temptation of the easy option.
Got it.
And in a third condition, participants could choose right at the beginning if they wanted to pre-commit themselves to only seeing the harder paid matrices later on, thereby removing the temptation of those easier unpaid ones before it even arose.
Okay. And the findings first showed that pre-commitment was definitely effective.
Absolutely. Forcing participants onto the harder paid tasks led to significantly better performance and higher earnings compared to the condition where they had the continuous choice between easy unpaid and hard paid. And even just having the option to pre-commit, for those who chose it, led to improved performance compared to the baseline group who never had the option.
So, causally, the data clearly showed that designing your environment in this case, by removing the temptation of low-effort alternatives, does improve performance and outcomes, at least in this task.
Yes, it strongly supports the core idea we've been discussing all along. Environmental design strategies like pre-commitment are powerful tools for overcoming self-control challenges.
But then came the crucial, and maybe, frankly, the challenging finding. The one that emerged when participants were simply given the choice whether or not to use that pre-commitment strategy.
This is the part that adds that layer of complexity. The study also measured participants' general level of trait self-control, basically. How well they typically regulate their impulses and stay focused on long-term goals in other areas of their life based on questionnaires. Okay? And the results were really striking. When given the option to pre-commit to only seeing the harder paid matrices, individuals who scored low on trait self-control were significantly less likely to choose this helpful strategy compared to those who scored high on self-control.
How much less likely?
The difference was substantial, a 35 percentage point difference in the likelihood of choosing pre-commitment. Let me say that again. The people who, theoretically, needed the help the most were the least likely to opt in to the tool that provided that help.
Wow. Okay. So the people who struggle most with willpower and self-control, the ones who probably have the most to gain from using environmental design or pre-commitment strategies, they are precisely the ones least inclined to actually choose these strategies when they are presented simply as optional tools.
That's what the specific study strongly suggests, yes. And perhaps even more concerning, the researchers found that simply providing information about how effective pre-commitment was in the forced condition didn't significantly close this gap.
So even telling them, hey, this thing works, didn't make a big difference.
Apparently not much. People with low self-control were still much less likely to choose pre-commitment, even after being shown data proving that it worked well for others.
Huh. This really complicates the picture for purely individual level solutions, doesn't it? If we just say, build apps that let you block distracting websites, or make healthier meal plan options available through your workplace, or just explain the benefits of setting up your kitchen in a certain way, are we mainly providing tools that are going to be disproportionately adopted by those who already have sufficient self-control or foresight to make the choice to use those tools in the first place?
It absolutely raises critical questions about potential inequalities and the limitations of purely optional individual choice interventions, particularly when we're talking about behaviors that have wider public health implications. It seems needing the strategy doesn't automatically translate into choosing the strategy, especially when the very act of choosing it might itself require an initial bit of self-control, planning, or belief in its effectiveness that might be lacking.
Okay, that's a really important layer to add to this whole discussion. So, bringing everything we've talked about together now from all these different sources, what's the core lesson? What should we really take away from this deep dive?
I think the overarching, really powerful theme is this. Instead of constantly engaging in that difficult, often losing internal battle, trying to reshape our behavior just through sheer willpower or self-deprivation, or even just relying on the cognitive effort required by education alone.
The constant struggle.
Yeah, a far more effective and likely more sustainable approach is to consciously reshape the context, reshape the environment in which we make decisions and perform actions, modify your physical space, influence the way choices are presented to you, that choice architecture we talked about. Do it so that your existing patterns of behavior, your natural human tendencies towards ease and visibility and inertia, are more likely to naturally lead you towards healthy and beneficial outcomes.
So make the healthy choice the easy choice. Make it the automatic choice. Make it the path of least resistance.
That's the goal. Yes, it's about leveraging predictable human behavior, our inertia, our tendency to respond to visual cues, our preference for ease and designing environments that subtly but powerfully nudge us towards what's ultimately good for us.
Whether that involves strategically placing fruit and hiding the cookies,
Or making beneficial policies the default setting.
or adding just enough friction to interrupt impulsive actions.
Or even clearing the clutter from our physical space to create more mental clarity. It's all part of the same toolkit.
This has been a genuinely insightful deep dive. Really fascinating. We've moved beyond just that common, often frustrating emphasis on willpower to discover that our environment is actually a much more powerful and often very overlooked driver of our choices and our habits. Behavioral economics and psychology give us the frameworks: choice architecture, defaults, positive friction, and all these real-world examples, from kitchen counters to organ donation rates to digital interface design. They really show how these principles play out in practice.
And we've also seen how this applies even to our internal mental landscape through ideas like minimalism.
Right. And then that research on pre-commitment adds that crucial, maybe humbling layer. It shows that while these environmental strategies are incredibly effective when they are used, simply offering them as optional tools might not automatically benefit those who perhaps struggle the most with the initial act of choosing to use them.
It highlights the potential need for more structural or perhaps default-based approaches in some areas, rather than relying solely on individual opt-in.
Which leaves us with a really important question to sit with, doesn't it? Considering that finding that people who might benefit most from these strategies are maybe less likely to opt into them when it's presented as a free choice, what is one tiny, almost effortless environmental change that you listening could make today, right now?
Yeah, something really small.
Something that requires minimal willpower in this moment. Maybe it's just moving one item, hiding something else, or placing something healthy where you'll see it. But that sets you up for an easier, healthier choice later, maybe tomorrow morning or this evening, when your willpower might be low. Don't overthink it. Don't plan a whole renovation. Just pick one small thing in your immediate physical or digital space and adjust it.
Start small, make it easy. Let your environment start working for you instead of feeling like you're constantly working against it.